We're standing here in the after torpedo room of the USS Clamagore 343. She was built by the Electric Boat Company out of Groton, Connecticut and commissioned June 28, 1945. Clamagore is a Vallejo-class diesel-electric submarine. Since May of 1981, Clamagore has been here at Patriots Point and open to touring for the public. Due to the USS Clamagore needing extensive repairs, it has become a safety and environmental hazard, and after more than a decade of searching for alternative options, the Patriots Point Development Authority Board voted to dismantle and recycle the submarine.
I think it's important to note that all vessels that from that era, and the Clamagore entered service right at 1945, they were built to last really 30 years. So if you kind of log that away, it's shelf life for all these World War II era vessels they thought were just max 30 years. Well, we're now pushing almost 80, and it sits in a saltwater bath. It's recommended every 10 years these types of vessels, submarines included, go into dry dock and completely out of the water to do hull repairs. You know, a submarine by design is built to submerge and to operate underwater for the majority of its life. Okay, so a surface vessel, a visual inspection is much easier. You can literally get in a small craft and do a visual inspection just by taking a tour around. Of course, you need divers in the water to really get a look at below the waterline, but with a submarine, so much of it rests below the waterline, and then again, those ballast tanks, you just don't know the condition until almost they fail. So the shellback, that black coating that you see over the entire hull of the vessel, that's started to corrode away, and that's a great indicator when you're having problems. And those ballast tanks are thinner steel than the rest of the ship, and they're very vulnerable. That's what starts corroding first. Ballast tanks started developing leaks, but you just pour soapy water over it and you can see bubbles. And when you see bubbles above the waterline bubbling up, you know you have a leak. It is an emergency. Over the course of the years, we've had small pinprick leaks, as I've mentioned, that we can take care of. And November, December, actually it was December, we noticed that there was a large leak in the main ballast tank. We couldn't save it. When you lose a main ballast tank, you have a problem. So we had to convert a normal fuel oil tank to as a ballast tank. That wasn't designed for it, it was designed for fuel. So our maintenance staff put their heads together and came up with a solution.
When I took over about a year ago, I knew the issue was there, we were trying to address it, and then things kind of sped up as soon as we recognized that there was a leak in one of the ballast tanks. And so not only did that kind of speed up the process of what are we going to do with this, because there's so many factors to consider, right? Not only are we thinking about the safety of the environment, Charleston Harbor, that would be a huge instance if something happened to the Clamagore and the environmental standpoint of that, but also the visitor safety as well. With a ballast tank leaking, we constantly have to put air in it to make sure that she's floating. It makes everything more imperative. But over the past decade, they've had several groups come in and look at it, they had fundraisers, private fundraisers, they have private groups, and no one could really come up with the funding to do it.
At one point, there were 6 different courses of action from different museums showing interest in saving the vessel to take her on. Everything from repurposing her and try to bring her on land. All of these options were close to or in excess of $10 million. Of course, we couldn't afford it at the time. It was not feasible economically for us to pursue that, to bring her on land or to pay for the shipping, the dead ship tow to another museum. They wanted it, but they couldn't afford it, if that makes sense. And of course, we absolutely would invite folks to come down and take a look at it, and we'd enter into discussions, but when it came down to it, they wanted us to fully repair the boat to make her seaworthy and also conduct a dead ship tow. If we could fully repair the hull, if we had the ability to repair the Clamagore, to tow her out to sea, we'd keep her. That would be the first course. Of course we'd keep the boat. That's exactly what we want to do. It's just not economically feasible to do something like that. If a Donny museum wanted to take Clamagore, they would have to take her as is, where is. And by that, all of the maintenance issues, all of the hazardous remediation, all of the coordination with the Corps of Engineers to dredge, open and close the marina, they would have to be willing financially to support all of that, and the tow to wherever her new berth might be. That is a Herculean undertaking to take this vessel, sadly, because of the current condition.
And so, there was talk about reefing it, The problem with reefing it is, one, the Navy does not reef any of their ships anymore because of the environmental impact.
When the vessel was turned over to us by the Navy, it was as is, where is. So all the batteries, all of the hazardous material, all the PCBs came with her. PCBs were used in everything. If you look around my office, from the paint on the walls to the cabling over the light fixtures, that's all PCBs aboard that boat. Now PCBs aren't dangerous unless you touch it and then maybe ingest it. It's not in the air. But the EPA and DHEC, they won't let us reef a vessel, for instance, when you've got all those PCBs aboard. Nearly every square inch of that vessel is rife with PCBs above 50 parts per million. It is not a reefing candidate because of that.
And I get that people are upset about it. We're not particularly happy with the decision, but it's a decision that has to be made. So we are trying to do what we absolutely feel is best for the ship, for the environment and the local community, and for ourselves here at Patriots Point.
We would do everything we can to save the submarine, if we could. But sadly, over time, I think this might be the fate of many vessels.
And we want to maintain the safest environment for our guests, for our, for the environment, for the harbor of Charleston. So that is our main concern at this moment in time. So we want to avoid that.
We're going to respectfully harvest the proper pieces and materials to make a future exhibit, and the rest of the end of life of that boat will be repurposed for other parts and pieces. But we will not be selling pieces of the boat to the general public.
On the silver lining side of all this is that the Clamagore story actually grows. It gets out to more and more people as more museums take on artifacts from this, instead of just here, which is fantastic in that sense.
Our curatorial team has gone through a few times and earmarked a few items that they want, because we intend to create a future exhibit.
So we are here aboard the ship to start selecting artifacts to serve in our permanent collection and as teaching tools as part of an exhibit aboard the Yorktown. We're selecting objects that had not just an importance to the Clamagore as a submarine, but an importance to the men who served aboard the ships. It might seem like a silly little object, but ladders were used on a daily basis, and kind of the knotwork or the sailor artwork that they put on these ladders meant something to them. So these are the types of items that help us to tell a story.
I've already been contacted by no less than 5 other museums at this point who are interested in even small pieces and parts, anything they can get their hands on to help out their museum. And we're going to do that. We're going to help those folks out as much as we can.
So the legacy of the ship itself and of those sailors continues to be maintained, continues to be respected, but also it grows, and so it's going to have a larger impact as that story gets disseminated throughout other museums. So that is a fantastic side byproduct of this. We'll put an exhibit here on the Yorktown at some point to continue to tell the stories, the importance of that ship, and the memories and the legacies of the sailors that served aboard her.